what type of heart rate and medical condition are Bills fans in this season? If you could just quickly recap the up and down ride of the Buffalo Bills year so far, it would sound like what?
Yeah, what a segue that was.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's a very disappointing start. Obviously, you lose that opener to the Jets. Aaron Rodgers goes out of the game 3 plays in, and you drop that one to Zach Wilson. And then they got on a roll, and then injuries really crushed the defense. The offense wasn't playing well enough, and we fired the offensive coordinator and Ken Dorsey. These last 3 weeks, this offense has been rolling under Joe Brady as the offensive coordinator. And, you know, it's been a disappointing season sitting here with a 7-6 record, and really you lose 4 games at the very end. And, you know, there's some luck involved there, but you also put yourself in those positions against some pretty crappy teams. And so all that being said, the Bills are fighting for their playoff chances, but I think Bills fans as well as people around the NFL are thinking if the Bills are able to get in to the dance, they have as good a shot as anyone to win it all.
Eric, how's the culture? Like, you're around the team, you cover the team, you go into that locker room, you've been in locker rooms. Does it feel like it's all good? Are we at a breaking point here with Sean McDermott, Stephon Diggs, and all the drama that we hear about outside of New York? Like, how would you describe the team culture, especially after what they just went through with this 9/11 story?
Yeah, I honestly think they're as close as they've ever been because of it. You know, that happened 4 years ago. Sean apologized before they even went to practice that day. Obviously, something he regretted saying, and it didn't come out like he meant it or intended. And so he apologized before the start of practice, and then it gets squashed. And 4 years later, you interview 25 former players and coaches who have all been dismissed by this head coach and current regime, and you get it brought up 4 years later amongst a bunch of other things. So I feel like, you know, especially over this past week, this team has come even closer than they've ever been, and all the messaging is around, we have our head coaches back. I played under Sean McDermott. I'm friends with Sean McDermott. Well, he is a good man. He's a high character man, and those guys are willing and doing all they can to stand up for him.
Eric, what kind of year is Josh Allen having?
I'll tell you what, he's having a great year. And, you know, everyone wants to talk about the interceptions, but he leads the league in total touchdowns, and he's played some really good ball this season. There has been some turnovers, but not all turnovers are created equal. I mean, Josh is he's not worried necessarily about his stats after the game. He's about getting the win. And so you have 2 Hail Mary balls that get intercepted. You know, if it's 3rd and 19, Josh is going to take a shot down the field, and if it's one-on-one coverage and the guy makes the play, it's essentially a punt. There's a lot of quarterbacks in the league that won't take those chances because they're worried about job security and touchdown to interception ratio and what that looks like for their future. Josh, he's not necessarily concerned about those things. He knows his standing in Buffalo is secure, and so he's going to give his guys a chance down the field. At times that costs him, and I'm not saying that Josh has not made mistakes this year, but I'll tell you this, Dan Orlovsky said it earlier this week, and I agree with him. If the Bills are able to get this win and Josh plays well, you know, it's 1-2 with Dak for the MVP race. When you've heard all these talking heads all year, all they're focused on is that since Josh has entered the league in 2019, he's led the league in turnovers. Well, he also leads the NFL in touchdowns over that time, and behind the Chiefs, and Patrick Mahomes has the second highest win percentage for any starting quarterback.
Eric, do they put too much on his plate offensively? That's what I've always felt in watching him. He's a freak. He's a beast. I've always loved him. But do they put too much on his plate? What's the status of the run game and the other weapons?
Yeah, I'll say this. At times they may have in the past, and some of that's based upon the talent that was around Josh. They needed him to. But when you look at what they put around him now, and especially with James Cook emerging at running back, they drafted him in the second round out of Georgia last year. He's 3rd in the NFL in yards from scrimmage, and he is rushing the ball really well. So you add in that run game, and for a majority of the season, they didn't put a ton on Josh's plate in the run game. These last few weeks, he has added that element back into his game of running the football, because at this point, especially when you got your backs against the wall, you put the ball in the hands of your best players, and at this point, that's going to be Josh Allen.
So has that been the Joe Brady offensive coordinator difference versus Ken Dorsey?
Yeah, but I don't want to put that all on Ken Dorsey. I think some of it comes from Sean McDermott, people in the organization that say over time we want to see Josh run the ball less and less, except for in critical situations. And now that the season's on the line, every game becomes full of critical situations. And, I'd say some of that's Ken Dorsey, and he got to witness, all the shots that Cam Newton took in Carolina as his quarterback coach down there. So I think that impacted some of the lack of usage of Josh in the run game, especially early on in this season. But at this point, especially down in the red zone, expect to see Josh Allen carrying the football.
We're talking with Buffalo Bills radio color analyst Eric Wood, former Bills center as well. Eric, when we look at it, and we talked to Mike McCarthy just about an hour ago and had asked him, it looks to us like this is a team that's a lot better than a 7-6 record. And McCarthy agreed, said when you look at it, they're really good. What is the reason for being 7-6? Is it just, does it come down to little details in close games?
It comes down to that, and then this defense has been depleted by injuries. I mean, when you look around this defense, probably the best player on their whole defense, Matt Milano, he's out for the season. Daquan Jones was playing really well at nose guard, had one of the highest pass rush win rates for all defensive tackles. He tears his pec over in London. Tre'Davious White, former All-Pro cornerback, he's out for the season with an Achilles. And then it's just been a rash of other injuries. Micah Hyde, their Pro Bowl safety, has been in and out of the lineup. And first-round draft pick last year, Kaiir Elam, the corner, he tears a ligament in his foot in training camp. It's just been so many injuries on the defensive side of the football. Oh, and your highest-paid player on the defense still hasn't recovered from his ACL injury last year in Von Miller. And so because of that, other guys have had to step up, but that's a big reason why the Bills are sitting there with 6 losses on the season.
So, Eric, what is the current strength and weakness of that defense right now?
The strength is still the pass rush. I mentioned Von Miller not being back to full strength, and the Bills are going to be likely without A.J. Epinesa this weekend, another one of their defensive ends. But they've really been able to get after the passer this year, second in the NFL in sacks. And because they've been able to put pressure on the other team's quarterback, then they've been able to force them into mistakes at time. And even if Micah Hyde can't go this weekend, their secondary's has done a really nice job this year, especially after they picked up Rasul Douglas at the trade line from Green Bay.
Eric Wood joining us on the Boomer Jacks Bar and Grill hotline from Buffalo here on Shan and RJ. Oh, what is the deal with Stephon Diggs?
I'm not sure what the drama in the spring was. We were never been given that information. All we were told is everything was fine. And, Stephon Diggs is a hardcore competitor, and I believe the noise from outside the building is more than the noise inside the building, if that makes sense. I mean, by all indications, Josh and Stephon are still good buddies, and even though there was a bunch of drama around that, Stephon Diggs, he may throw his helmet on the sideline. He may break a tablet, but that's not a reaction to anyone else. That's his own frustrations. And, I mean, thank God throughout my time playing in the NFL that, one, we weren't on national TV that much, and I was an offensive lineman because they could have probably shown me doing similar things on the sideline.
Eric, this week Dan Quinn said he wouldn't ask Trayvon Diggs. He wouldn't put Trayvon Diggs in the position of giving the inside scoop or having to give intel on his brother. Is that a common thing in NFL circles? Like, have you ever run into that where it's like, well, we're not going to ask this guy to give us the scoop on his family member?
I haven't been around a situation like that. It's pretty common in the NFL that, whenever you're playing a team, whether it's a coach or a player that was under that coaching staff and not even necessarily play for that team, but maybe with that coaching staff or maybe play with certain guys, that you'll pick their brain. Ultimately, the film's going to tell you most of what you need to know anyways. And then if you were under a certain coaching staff, you might be able to get some of their terminology that you might hear throughout the game, whether it's defensive calls, offensive calls that you hear at the line of scrimmage. But as far as what Trayvon would be able to give up information-wise on his brother, I don't know that there would be anything that you wouldn't be able to see on film.
We all think we're professional game managers. we play Madden, and we have all these analytics and all the numbers. We've criticized Mike McCarthy, Jason Garrett here, and now Sean McDermott kind of gets killed for it nationally. How would you grade Sean McDermott as a game manager?
He's a first-time head coach, and when you look at his record, 0-6 in overtime, it's easy to critique, especially some of his conservative decisions. And I feel like over time, he's gotten more aggressive. And, we saw it in Kansas City with some late game decisions last week. And so, I don't want to simply say that Sean isn't good in those situations. I think it's as much on the players in those situations as it is on the coaches. And for what Sean McDermott has done in taking an organization that I played in, we were in the longest playoff drought in all of pro sports and no stability within the organization. And over these last 7 years under Sean McDermott, in the playoffs virtually every year, break that playoff drought my final year in 2017 with a team that everyone thought was tanking. And the culture that he's created up in Buffalo, to me, he's done a phenomenal job.
Do you think most coaches are generally bad at game management, clock management?
That's a great question. And I'll say this. I would say some coaches probably look a lot smarter than they truly are by guys making plays when they're ultra aggressive. And then if you're a head coach and you make too conservative of a decision, then that's all going to come back on you because maybe you didn't allow your guys the opportunity to go try and win it or make the play. And so I think similar to quarterbacks in those late game situations, unless it's a truly an egregious mistake by the coach, they probably get too much blame or credit. And the players in those situations, when you turn on the film, probably were the ones at fault.
Eric, give us your perspective on what you've seen from the Cowboys on tape and getting ready for this game.
Man, they're really good. They truly are. They have star power all over the field offensively. I've been a fan of that offensive line for a long time. I think they do a great job, and I think they've added some nice pieces, along that front, especially Tyler Smith at left guard. CeeDee Lamb's been great this year. Tony Pollard has been on my fantasy team, and I hope for a touch more production from him, but he's good for some catches each week. But I'll say this, Dak Prescott, the year he's having is absolutely incredible. And I have a ton of respect. I mean, the Cowboys are probably the most talked about team in the entire league each and every season. And the way he's handled that quarterback position since he's taken over and the maturity he has, and to be peaking at this point of his career is extremely impressive to me. He's having an awesome season. Defensively, Micah Parsons obviously stands out. I've thought for years that DeMarcus Lawrence is one of the best defensive linemen in all of football. Secondary's played great this year despite Trevon Diggs being out for the season. Stephon Gilmore is a former teammate of mine. I love that dude to death and have always had a ton of respect for him. And then I'll tell you what, when you turn on the film, that Marquise Bell, he's listed at 205 on my sheet. I think people have said he's 210 pounds. But what he does, that he's kind of a chess piece for Dan Quinn to use, and he's great in coverage, and he's not ultra light in the run game either. Like, he makes plays in the run game. So there's kind of an assessment on all the levels of both offense and defense. Oh, yeah, and then you have a rookie kicker who hasn't missed yet this year. So and you say all that, and that's why the Cowboys are sitting there at 10-3 on the season.
And that leads me to another segue. I did a segue. You did a segue. Very well done. Eric Wood, Bills analyst here on The Fan. What's the weather looking like for Sunday out there?
Yes, pretty balmy, high 40s, and forecasting for some rain. We'll see if it happens or not. But, when you look at this Dallas team, I'm not saying they can't play well in the elements, but when they've left Cowboy Stadium, that's when they've had 3 of their losses, and the offensive production goes from 40 points a game to, I believe, 24 points a game on the road. So maybe the Bills can catch an advantage there.
I don't know how much you saw the Raiders-Chargers game, but it appears that L.A. has completely quit on Brandon Staley. Have you been a part of a team that just completely quit on the coach?
It may have looked like we quit as bad as we played at times, because I did have 2 interim coaches throughout my time. We did have 2 midseason fires, but there wasn't a situation where we necessarily quit on them. We weren't very good at the time, honestly. But no, we didn't quit on them. I will say this, when you're in a situation where LA's at right now, where you get your quarterback hurt and everything's kind of reeling and the game starts going bad, sometimes it can just steamroll you in those situations. And you saw it last night against the Raiders.
Is that something he can recover from, or is that just done?
No, I'd say he's probably done. I mean, it seemed like this was kind of a make or break year for Staley anyways. And, you have Herbert so young in his career, and you don't want to waste what you got in him. And I would say that there's probably a decision coming here soon. When you have that Thursday, after that Thursday night game, that's kind of that sweet spot for organizations to say, hey, if we move on from someone now, we have a little bit more time to transition. And it wouldn't surprise the Bills play in LA next week against the Chargers. It wouldn't surprise me to see them have a new head coach. I'm just hoping they don't get that one game bump that you see many teams get, kind of the Jeff Saturday Colts last year, the Antonio Pierce. I guess I'm just hoping they don't hire a former player with no head coaching experience and rally the troops and get them to do something crazy next week.
Eric, this was fantastic, man. We really appreciate the time. Have a fantastic call and keep killing it.
No, I appreciate that, guys. My pleasure.
Eric,
y'all have a good weekend.